Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at part 28 from the Hercules story from Ritchie's Fabulae Faciles. So part 28 is called The Golden Ship, and it's continuing the story of his 10th labor, trying to get the oxen of Geryon. So before you dive too far in, like I always tell you, the first thing you want to do is make sure you have a good understanding of the vocabulary. If you can find a commentary or reader for this, or even make your own vocab list, anything you can do to make sure that you know what all the words are. Ritchie's is very good at repeating the vocab, so a lot of it is very familiar, but still, any new words, you want to make sure that you write them down, you look them up, you practice a bit, and you have a really strong grasp on the vocab before you dive too far into the story, because it's just really hard to understand and appreciate the story if you don't know what the words mean. So always start there. The other thing you want to do, if you can find a partner in class or anyone to read this to, try to read the story aloud, work on your speaking, your pronunciation. If they can read it back to you, you can work on your listening skills. Those are always good things to develop so you can really understand the language. And like I always tell you, you'd be surprised how much easier it becomes when you're activating those skills instead of just reading it in your head and trying to translate. Bring it to life, treat the language for what it is, and it'll all help. The other thing I'd recommend is doing the read and reread method. So the goal is to be able to read this without needing a vocab or any vocab help, a dictionary, or any grammar help as well. The way you get there is you want to read through it once, write down any words, phrases, any grammar that you don't understand, then spend some time looking it up to try to see, what is this form? What is this verb? How come I don't understand it? Then once you've done that, you go back and read it a second, a third, a fourth time, as many times as you need to. And every time that you read it and reread it, you should get better and better and better. You can keep looking up the words, and you're trying to hit a point where eventually you'll be able to read this without having to look anything up. If you can make it to that point, you're in a really good place. Okay, so I'd start there. We're going to continue on right now, but I would suggest you at least do a few reads of it on your own until you're feeling comfortable, and then you can double check what you did against what I have here. Not that mine's perfect, but as long as you're in the ballpark, you should feel pretty good that you understand what's going on. Okay, so we're going to start up. It goes like this. You have dum hic morator, Hercules magnum in commodium ex calore solis accipieba. So you're saying doom, while, right? So while he delays. So morator here is a deponent verb, right? And it comes from the verb to delay. Okay, so moror, morari means to delay or linger. So here the form you're looking at is just present tense, and you treat it as if it's active, okay, because it's a deponent verb. So you're saying while he delays here, right? And again, the background here is that Hercules is trying to complete, right, his 10th labor, right, with Geryon, and he's still trying to leave. He had been in Libya, if I remember right. He was at the Pillars of Hercules, and now he's still trying to figure out where to go, right? He's trying to find his path. Okay, so while he is delaying here, you have Hercules. Accipieba here, it can mean he received, right? He was receiving is kind of one way to translate it. It kind of works. It almost works better in context to say that he was almost feeling something. Receiving is a little bit odd, but still, it's saying that he was receiving or kind of getting magnum in commodium, right? This great discomfort from the calore, from the heat of the sun, calore solis, right? So calore is a good word. Think like calorie, for instance, is how much, it's like a temperature thing, if I remember right. To raise the degree in water, it has to do with heat, okay? So that's always a good way to kind of think about it. So he's hot is the idea, right? He's from the heat of the sun, he has a lot of discomfort. Then you have tandem egetor, ira commotis, arcum suum intendit et solem sagatis peteat. So this line is the most Hercules thing of all time, right? He's hot, so what does he do? Therefore, finally, moved by anger, right? Ira commotus. The commotus part is the participle having been moved, and then you just have the ablative by anger. He intended arcum suum, so he drew or stretched his bow, meaning he aimed it or stretched it, and he attacked the solem with arrows, sagatis. So he shoots arrows at the sun, because of course he does, right? You don't like the sun, he's freaking out, he starts shooting arrows at it to make it stop because it's really hot, okay? Then you have the next part here, the next line. You have sol tamen, audaciam viri tantum admiratus est, ut lintrem auream ei dedere. So the sun, and this is really talking about, in Greece, it would probably be Helios, I would think, is the god that is actually referenced in the myth. But the sun, however, or therefore, right, you might say, however, the sun, admiratus est, it admired, okay? So here you have another word, admiror is another deponent verb. So admiratus est is perfect tense. It looks perfect passive, but because it's deponent, you want to translate it actively. So it's saying the son, however, admired such boldness, tandem audaciam, the boldness of the man, that, right, it's a result clause. So with the result that, dideret, it gave to him, right? So dideret there is from the verb dare, to give, and you're just looking at the subjunctive form, right? The perfect subjunctive, and because you have the result clause, okay? So it's saying it gave to him a lintram auream, a golden ship or golden vessel or boat. I think in some myths it's actually a cup he goes around in, but either way, the golden boat is kind of what he gives to Hercules because he's so impressed by how bold he was to pick up his bow and start shooting arrows at the sun. Okay. Then you have the next line. You have Hercules, hoc donum libentissime accepit, nullam enem navem in his regionibus invenire potuera. So Hercules, right, he accepit, he accepted hoc donum, this gift, and he did it libentissime, right, most gladly, right, or most willingly. So he's really happy to get this gift. For enim, right, because, or for potuerat, he had been able, right, it's pluperfect, he had been able to find, in venire, it's just a complementary infinitive, he had been able to find nullam navem, that's your direct object, no boat or no ship, in his regionibus just means in these regions, right? So the area he's in, he doesn't have a boat, he isn't able to sail, right? So he's kind of stuck, so he happily takes the boat. Then you have tum lintram deduxit, et ventum noctus idoneum post breve tempus ad insulam pervene. So then he deduxit is probably best translated as like he launched the boat. Kind of makes the most sense given what's going on. Deducere means to like lead or bring down in a lot of translations, but launch, I think for a boat kind of makes the most sense, right? He launches the lintram, his golden boat. And noctus. So noctus here is the participle, right? And it's coming from non-kiskor, which means to attain, right? It's a deponent verb. So you can think of this as just a normal participle. So having obtained or having attained the idoneum ventum, a suitable wind, right? So having attained rather a suitable wind after a short time, pervenit ad insulam, he reached the island, or he reached an island. So in other words, he sets sail, he gets a suitable wind, and now he's off and running, and he ends up where he's supposed to be. Okay. Then you have ubi ex incolis, cognovit, quo in loco boes essent, in eam partem statum profectus est, et a rege gerione postulavit ut boes sibi traderentur. So when he cognovit, he learned, right? Learned is probably good. So when he learned from the incolis, from the inhabitants, in which place, so quo in loco is really in quo loco, right? You can reverse them around. So in what place the boes, the oxen were, right? And again, this the essent there is the verb to be, okay? So it's just saying when he had learned where they were. In eam partem statum profectus est, he departed or set out into that part, right? Eam partem, immediately. So in other words, he figures out where the cows are held, right? Where they're hanging out, and he immediately goes over there, right? Into the place that they are. And he postulavit, he demanded from Rege Gerione, from King Gerion, that, right, and here we have an indirect command because he's demanding something we don't have the quote. So he demanded that the boes, the oxen, be handed over, right? Traderentur is your subjunctive, right? It's an imperfect passive, right? Because you have the indirect command. So you could say he demanded that they might be, or that they be handed over, sibi, to him, okay? So he goes up to the king and he says, hey, like, give me these oxen, right? I'm on a mission. I need it. Then you have cum tamen illi hoc facere nolet Hercules et regem ipsum et iuritionem qui era ingenti magnitudine corporis interfecit. So, of course, the king is not going to want to give him his special cattle. So you have when, right? It's a cum clause. When, however, he didn't want. So nolet there, again, is imperfect subjunctive, right? Because you have the cum clause there. So when he did not want, or was not wanting to do this, facere hoc, right? The ille there is talking about King Eurystheus, okay? Or sorry, not King Eurystheus, King Gerion. So it says, when he, however, didn't want to do this, Hercules, now we have to look because you have regem ipsum et Eurytionem. So you have two direct objects here. So something's happening to the king himself and to Eurytion, the person that we had already, the sort of three-person monster thing that we'd already heard about. So you look for the verb, and it's interfecit. So of course, what does Hercules do? He asks politely, he gets a rejection, and he kills everybody, right? So interfecit means he killed. So Hercules killed the king himself and Eurytion, right? That sort of three-person shepherd thing, right? Then you have a relative clause. Qui is the relative pronouns describing Eurytion, right? So it's who was. Then you have the ablative here. You have ingenti magnitudine. This is probably we call it ablative of quality, right? Just describing the quality of them. You can translate it with of, though. It probably makes the most sense to say who was of huge magnitude or huge size of body, right? Corpus, meaning he was a giant, right? He had a giant body, right? He's got massive, okay? So he killed him and he killed the king. Okay, so hopefully this made some sense. Again, it's her kind of responding the way that we think he does whenever an obstacle occurs. It's usually violence. So like I said, the grammar is continuing on with what we've been doing. Subjunctive is really what we're working on. But hopefully you've been able to follow the plot. And again, I'd encourage you to look up the 10th labor and take a look just so you understand the context of what's happening here. But if you have any questions at all on the grammar, the Latin itself, put them in the comments below. Otherwise, try to compare what I did against what you did. Not that they have to match perfectly, but as long as you're in the same ballpark, and like I said, you were able to do it without needing a vocab list or a dictionary or any grammar help, you can feel really comfortable that you're in a good place, okay? So keep at it. Let me know if you need anything, and good luck.